Attention, please.
And now, it's Cutter's Rockcast.
So Scarlet Cross, in this particular song from Black Veil Brides, the thing that is interesting to me is you guys never, the band itself, although the hardcore following exists, and although you're a draw and everything else, you've never really crossed that barrier to the, that mainstream playlisting, rock radio, videos on everywhere. But this song seems to be headed in that direction, if not already crossed some of those barriers. Is there anything about Scarlet Cross that you think kind of points to that direction for you, that you think maybe relates a little bit more, whatever it may be, like something you can put your finger on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is if you're lucky enough to be able to cultivate an audience and stick around for a little while, I think that audience inherently, in some ways it'll open doors for you. A lot of bands struggle to have anybody that cares about what they're doing for a long period of time. And I think it's you can take a bunch of credit and say like, it's because of our work ethic or whatever else, which is all true. But everyone in the music industry to a certain extent works hard. Everybody tries their best. You have to have the incredible luck of having people find what you do and associate with it and give it longevity. If you're not a band that immediately has mainstream success, because you have to have that audience that's going to support you and have that support system. So we've been extremely fortunate that for the course of the last 10 years that we've been a band, that audience has been there, like you said, but that has created the opportunity for us to make these records and to keep pushing forward. And I think at this point, we just really know who we are as a band. One of the things that's interesting about like rock music is I think it takes some time to really develop your sound, who you are, and have it be a genuine thing that's presented to people and does it. Because I think when any band first starts, like the basis for starting a band more often than not is like, you like Black Sabbath, I like Black Sabbath, let's play some Black Sabbath songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then you kind of like, you go from there and then you build up your repertoire. And I think that the rock audience is super discerning. I think that rock radio knows what works and what doesn't. And I think that, it's kind of like you have to prove yourself to get there. And so hopefully, at this point in our career, we've been able to do that at least to some extent so far, and hopefully it gets more and more so. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's one ingredient that goes into it. More so, it's like there's a convalescence of like a lot of things that occur, and you do your best to try to make the best songs you can. But I mean, more than anything, we think it's a great song, so we're excited that other people like it.
At the end of the day, that's the formula, right? If you don't have a great song, it's not going to happen. If you have a great song, there's a chance of it happening. Still a little lottery, but it's still, it's a lot.
I used to get frustrated because like when we first started, there would be, we would talk to these idols and icons of ours because, the band had gotten some heat in the early days and people were paying attention. And people like Nikki Sixx and Dee Snider and all these guys would say, oh, you just need to have the song. And I'd be like, well, I like all these songs that we have. And you don't really know what that means until you become a more experienced writer and you know what you're doing and you feel like you can kind of develop what your sound is distinctly. And I mean, look, far be it for me to say what the song is, but I feel like at this point as a band, like we know what we're doing and we want to be able to convey exactly what our sound and style is in this music. And I think that this record as a whole really represents that well.
Well, awesome. I can't wait to hear more of it. There's no doubt. I had this moment with Black Veil Brides where I was watching you guys at a festival of some sort. I don't even remember where exactly, to be honest with you. But I know it has to be probably about 4 or 5 years ago because I was still with my ex-girlfriend at the time. And I remember looking at her and going, and she had been a fan, that whole genre of music in that time frame, that was her thing.
Sure.
And I remember looking at her going, why don't I listen to more Black Veil Brides? Because it's like the music, it's my stuff. It's good. There's guitar solos, great vocals. It's metal, but there's still melody. It's everything that I loved about music, but for whatever reason, I personally just never, I'd hear a song or so here and there, I did a metal show,
Sure.
Did, here and there, but I just never spent a ton of time until the last few years listening to Black Veil Brides. And I'm kind of mad at myself for it, to be honest, because I've got found some gems that I love,
Well, I appreciate that. Don't be mad. I think the reality is, when we first started, as I said, we were very fortunate to have that kind of the fervor of the audience, but that also developed a certain level of, there was a little bit of divisiveness in terms of the band. And so there was all this baggage that came along with hearing or seeing or listening to the band. And I think most of it, at least in my opinion, which I'm biased, but I think most of it was unwarranted. I think a lot of it was people would see the imagery, or they wouldn't want to associate with different elements of like what the time frame was. As you said, there's kind of a genre and a style. So like, I don't know that there's necessarily one reason, but it certainly is true that particularly when we first started as a band, there was a certain bias against us that I don't think people necessarily even knew that they were indulging in. It just existed. We would go and do festivals or whatever else, and before we could even play a single note, there would already be a decision that was made about us. But that has benefited us in so many ways over the years, because I think we wouldn't be around today or have the kind of connection with the audience that we have today if we were the darlings of everybody from the time we started, if we walked out and were immediately celebrated. And that's not to take away from bands that are, but you and I both know that there are many bands who, from the first time they play a festival somewhere, everybody's hyped about them. They're the best. Everybody agrees that they're the best. All of the metal kind of like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of a recipe for mediocrity over time, because if nobody's telling you that what you're doing sucks, it's very hard to push to do something great. You know what I mean? And so in some ways, I feel very fortunate that we've had to take that journey. And I don't care when anybody finds us. I don't care if anybody watches or sees this or listens to this interview and still thinks we're trash. It doesn't really matter to me. To me, as long as we continue to have the opportunities, we're going to do our best to show you that we believe in what we're doing and that we think we're a very good band who makes good music.
Excellent. Can we talk about acting a little bit? Because sure. I want to know when you decided to start doing that. First of all, I love the movie American Satan.
Thank you.
I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And now obviously there's a show coming very soon called Paradise City. But start at the beginning of that. When did you decide you wanted to act as well as be rock star?
Well, it actually, weirdly, it kind of happened at the same time. When I grew up in Ohio, and opportunities to perform were very limited, and the only like rock scene was bars, and it was very hard. Like when I was a teenager to be able to play shows, we would do pop-up shows, or we'd play at an art gallery, whatever kind of thing you could do. You know, there's always like somebody's basement or whatever it was.
Yeah, but I couldn't. I get it.
Yeah. And so I couldn't get consistent, like, especially at like 14, 15, 16, nobody would really take me seriously, and I couldn't get into these bars. So I wanted to perform in some way, and I needed to find a way to occupy my time. And so I auditioned to get into the performing arts school in Cincinnati. And I wound up getting accepted in the drama department and the vocal music department. About a week into being in the vocal music department, which is what I really wanted to do, I got kicked out of the vocal music department and told that I was not choir material. I guess I was trying to be the lead singer of the choir, which it doesn't really work out. So then I just said, well, I guess acting is what I got. So I focused on that when I was in the early part of my high school years. And I started doing like, you know, there's always like a commercial for, and this is going to sound funny, but there's always like a commercial for like skinny druggy dude, you know what I mean? Like playing a meth head or whatever it was. So I started doing like PSAs and like stuff like that, because I looked like ostensibly like a Tim Burton character. So they would just put me in stuff like that. And it was fun, and it was, you know, something I could do. But then once the band really started to take off and I could tour regionally, that was always my passion. So I kind of put that away. And I had shared this with Ash Alvinson, who directed and wrote the film, and also Paradise City as well. And we've worked with him for years. He was our booking agent for a time. Obviously, he is the owner and creator of Sumerian Records, which we're on now. But I've known Ash for the entirety of my career, basically. And I'd always told him, you know, acting was a thing I enjoyed, and I'd love to do it someday. And then we were on Warped Tour in 2015, and he came up to me. I think we were in San Diego. He came up to me and said, hey, I wrote a movie that I want you to, like, I wrote it with you in mind to play the lead, and what do you want to do it? And knowing Ash, the thing about Ash is like, he's one of the only people I know in the industry who, first of all, genuinely loves rock and roll, like is a rock and roll person. It's not a pose, like he is through and through. And second, like he makes stuff happen that he wants to do. So if you have a friend that comes up and says, I'm going to make a movie, most of us would go, oh, okay, yeah. But knowing what Ash is and what he's capable of doing, I was like, all right, let's do this. And it wasn't too long before we made the movie. And I'll tell you this, just as a side thing, you know, Ben from Asking Alexandria and I are both in the movie, and we always joked that when we did American Satan, well, the bar will never be lower for us on any job we've ever done, because everyone in the crew, all these serious actors, knew that these two rock guys are coming in to be in this movie, and they were terrified that we wouldn't know our lines, that we couldn't act. And so like the collective exhale on set when we did our first scene, and people were like, oh, they're not terrible. Okay, great. And then when we did the show, everybody just expected us to be decent. So we were like, man, where's the like celebration of mediocrity that we had on the last one? But yeah, I mean, it's always been something that's been fun for me. And now to be able to add it to my career as like a legitimate thing that I'm doing, it literally all goes to Ash and his belief in me.
Well, what a cool cast for the movie too. I mean, if you're gonna work in in that setting for the first time, and to be able to work with some of those actors, I have to imagine that had to be pretty inspiring.
It's kind of a at the time it was a daunting task, but you got to rise to the moment. So like working with obviously Malcolm McDowell, Malcolm is method in the sense that like, and there would be scenes where, and I've never told this story before, but it's sort of funny. We would do scenes where he's supposed to be insulting me as the character and we're talking, and he would just straight up insult me as a person. Like he would go like start talking about my actual tattoos and all this other stuff. And so like you kind of get, and then he'll say after the take, oh, you did amazing. Like he's very nice, but it's like the whole method acting thing, all that stuff, something I wasn't at all comfortable with, or not uncomfortable with, but not familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so you got to think on your feet. If somebody goes off script, you got to be able to get on with them and go through the scene with them. And there were times early on where I found myself falling short of that because Malcolm or Mark Boone Jr. or any of these really experienced actors would go a little bit off script. And I had spent months learning the words on the page, and that's it. And then I have to like figure out how to join them in that scene. So like it was just an incredible experience. And also Malcolm, Mark, just everybody in that movie and the TV series as well no one had any kind of issue with us being rock guys being in this. Everybody cheered for us and wanted us to succeed and helped us. And I mean, I know that there's a lot of stigma against like, Hollywood in general and the kind of like the personality types that are involved in like the entertainment industry. But the reality is the experience I had on both the movie and the show is just a bunch of really genuine, awesome people that were very kind and awesome to work with. That's
amazing. The show will be debuting soon. So what can you tell us about it? I mean, give us the synopsis of the show. Get past the movie and then we get to the show.
Yeah, so the movie is, it isn't required viewing, I don't think, for the series. However, I think it would be helpful to build some context for people to have seen the movie. But the series is essentially the life of this. I'll just speak from my perspective on what my plot is kind of in the show. It's the life of this person who has become a massive rock star, doesn't really have a lot of skill sets when it comes to being an adult, and kind of this incredible spiral out of control that his life takes, and trying to stay sober, trying to stay to be a good boyfriend, to like all the things and all the temptations that surround you as being somebody who's, in Johnny's case, extremely famous, extremely wealthy, but really not very good at being a human. And it's it's just like it's crazy to play that character and play somebody who is so duplicitous and but you still, like, as an audience, the goal is that you want to cheer for him. And he does everything he can to make you not want to cheer for him. But, it's actually, I compare it, it's not dissimilar to the kind of Jack's role in Sons of Anarchy, if you know what I mean, where it's somebody who the audience cheers for them, and that's the leader of the gang, so to speak. But they're doing things on an episode basis where you're like, oh man, please don't do that. That's terrible.
The hero character. I mean, that's
exactly. Yeah. And that's, there's a few other storylines that, are specifically mine, but for anybody who's familiar with the Johnny character, the kind of A story in the show is this journey. And then there's another B story where, Cameron Boyce is I don't want to call it B story. There's a separate story where Cameron Boyce, who's unfortunately passed away, plays, but just an incredibly rooted character of this kid who grows up loving rock and roll and wants to be a part of that world and will do anything to become a part of that world. And I mean, it's just I can't say enough about the show. It's incredible, and I can't wait for everybody to see it.
When is it exactly debuting? And where? Because I didn't see what service or any of that it's going to be on.
Amazon Prime. It is Amazon Prime, and it is debuting at the, to my knowledge, and I don't have anything specific because their announcement has not come yet. And this one I can't tell you because it hasn't come yet, but I believe it's somewhere towards the middle to end of March.
Okay, yeah, because and we've been saying March. Yeah. Since the announcement of the show, but all right. So
unfortunately, unlike the record, I'm just an actor in the show, so I don't have any pull when it comes to that stuff.
Give us the secrets.
Yeah.
At least it's not. At least you're not in a Marvel movie where you can't literally say anything at all.
I mean, yeah, I would never wish anyone to be in a Marvel movie. Poor Marvel movie actors.
Yeah, horrible. They must just have the worst jobs.
Oh man,
being seen by millions of people all over the world all the time. Anyway, Black Veil Brides. One more time, the name of the new album.
The Phantom Tomorrow. So it is it's a concept record. There is a comic book coming as well. And I actually just got off the phone this morning with the publishing company for the comic book. We're developing all the artwork and everything for that. But the record is a concept record. The story is essentially the idea of in our society, we have this kind of, especially now, we have this love of building up heroes and obsessing over other people who often don't give a shit about, sorry, excuse my language, they don't give a crap about you or anybody else. And we kind of have these false idols and heroes. And so the story is kind of about taking this kind of like mythological character and the people putting all of this power onto them, and then ultimately turning their back on the character because nobody can fulfill the dreams and ideas that you've put on somebody else. So it's a little bit of like, it's an alternate version of our own timeline where our obsession with heroes and the iconography of somebody that's aspirational kind of gets out of control and becomes our whole society.
So, okay, writing a concept, is this, first of all, is this you and somebody else? Is this you and the rest of the band? Is it the band idea? Like when you're writing a concept like this and you have to have the music set with lyrics set to a story, and then obviously I'm assuming you probably planned the graphic novel out even before that became a reality. All of these things kind of working in unison together. Start at the beginning of that process.
Well, so this one started last year, in January of last year. I just kind of sat down and started writing this story, drawing. I do a lot of drawing when I'm writing as well. Like I'm not great, but I like to be able to represent kind of my ideas in that way. So I wrote out this whole story and drew character designs. And then about a week and a half later, we were set to enter the studio, and it just kind of was coincidental that this whole rush of this idea came to me. And so I went in the studio with everybody and said, look, this is what I think we should do. And, laid out kind of the story and the plot and the ideas. And then because we've done concept records before, the kind of method that we've found is best is I give the content and the ideas as far as the narrative perspective to the band. And then that is how we write as a band together to get tone and how we're going to get through this journey. I will take those songs and then go basically write the lyrics to serve the story and plot lines along the journey from song one to the last song. So it's kind of like, there are unfortunate like kind of shackles that are put on it, meaning that you only have you got to write within the context of what you're writing. But I tried to keep this one more open-ended where it's applicable, because I didn't want to write about stuff I don't know. I wanted it to be about my experience, and there's really nothing about our story that doesn't mimic the current situations, whether it's on a personal level with people that I've known or on a socio-political level with kind of the craziness of the world right now. The ideas are universal, and so that made it a little bit easier to kind of get through the journey. But as far as the comic book goes, it's kind of the same thing. I come up with the story and the artwork ideas, and then work with people who are much more talented than I am to make that a reality.
Well, we look forward to it. The Phantom Tomorrow from Black Veil Brides. Andy Biersack, lead singer, and of course the show Paradise City, debuting mid-March on Amazon, mid to late March on Amazon Prime. We don't have the exact date yet. Dude, it's a pleasure, man, and I really appreciate you taking the time for sure.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for chatting with me.
Cutter's Rockcast.
Don't forget to tune in.
Exactly.